In a world that's always vying for our attention, where everyone has an opinion, where every voice is louder than the last, it's easy to forget the most critical person in your life, you. Muniba Mazari reminds us that the greatest journey we'll ever embark upon is the journey inward, the journey of self-attention. She teaches us that in order for you to inspire, help, or love others, first you must learn to know and care for yourself. There was a period in Muniba's life when noise surrounded her, doubtful voices, pitying voices, critical voices. When she had her accident, people dictated what she could do, what she couldn't do, what her life was going to be or not be. People said her dreams were shattered, that she was no longer of value, that her potential was lost. But Muniba took a different road. She went within. Rather than battling to vindicate them, she concentrated on vindicating herself. She set out listening to her own heart rather than the world's echo. That marked the start of her transformation. When you pay attention to yourself, you start noticing life differently. You cease gauging your value via people's approval. You start asking better questions. Who am I? What really makes me happy? What am I going to do today to be a better me than yesterday? That's what Muniba did. She started painting, not to please others, but to heal. Every stroke was an act of self-love, a quiet reminder that she could still make something beautiful when life was trying to take it from her. Her work became her voice, her therapy, and her message to the world, all bred from concentrating on herself. In our own lives, we spend so much energy attempting to fit into other people's molds, validating ourselves with others who refuse to be understood, or justifying ourselves to those who are intent on not understanding us. Muniba's experience reminds us that prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it's imperative. It takes great courage to pull away from the fray, to declare, I will not compare myself to anyone but myself. Because when you turn your attention inward, you no longer run toward perfection and run toward expansion. Muniba often says that life becomes peaceful when you stop reacting to everything around you. She learned that focusing on herself allowed her to protect her energy and rebuild her confidence. Instead of questioning why things happened to her, she began asking how she could make the best out of them. That shift in focus changed everything. It didn't happen overnight. It took patience, silence, and self-compassion. But it was that quiet dedication that helped her rise stronger than before. Being self-focused is also about being aware, being honest with yourself about your weaknesses, your routines, your thoughts, and your feelings. Muniba was open about facing her fears. She was honest about feeling broken, about being afraid, about giving up sometimes. But through admitting those things, she gained mastery over them. That self-honesty is where true strength lies, because self-focusing is not about turning your back on the world. It's about becoming so rooted that the world cannot unroot you. When you turn inward, you start living on purpose. You no longer move just because the masses are moving. You start stopping, contemplating, making decisions based on your values and aspirations. That's what Muniba teaches us, that your development is not found in noise but in stillness. It's in those moments of silence, of contemplation, that you really find who you were meant to be. And so, as Muniba's life so beautifully depicts, the strength of self-awareness comes in silence and honesty. It is not a question of being superior to others. It's a question of being superior to what you were yesterday. It is not about dismissing people. It's about caring for the voice that resides inside you. Because once you know how to care for yourself, everything else falls into place naturally. Success, peace, and happiness no longer become something you pursue. They become an echo of the person you are now. Ultimately, Muniba's story teaches us one small yet profound truth. When you're all about yourself, the world starts to look at you differently, not because you've changed the world, but because you've changed your own life. And that, in a very real sense, is where all greatness starts. So simple, yet so powerful. In an era when everyone needs to be heard, when opinions are louder than comprehension, silence may seem like weakness. But Muniba Mazari never teaches us that. She demonstrates the opposite. She teaches us that silence is not surrender. It is a kind of strength, of wisdom, of profound inner tranquility. It is in quiet that you start hearing what really counts. Your own heart, your own mind, your own truth. Following her accident, Muniba's life settled into unanticipated quiet. The world outside her moved swiftly, yet she couldn't. She lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by uncertainty, pain, and fear. There were individuals speaking all over her, some expressing pity, others speaking hushed words of doubt. And still she remained quiet, not because she did not have anything to say, but because she was learning to listen. In the silence, she found clarity. She came to realize that sometimes the most effective answer is no answer. Silence allowed her time to think about her purpose. It allowed her room to process her hurt. It taught her patience. Above all, it taught her that she did not need to justify her worth to anyone. She didn't need to justify her dreams, her decisions, or her setbacks. She understood that she could simply allow her actions to do the talking for her. That's the power of silence. It speaks when words fail. Muniba's story makes us remember that the world tends to misinterpret quiet individuals. They assume silence equates to weakness, or passivity, or fear. But the reality is that silence usually belongs to the strongest hearts. It requires strength to remain calm when people are testing you. It requires confidence to stand still when the world encourages you to hurry. It requires inner strength to make your peace be more powerful than your anger. Muniba is that type of strength, the type that can get its message across without screaming. Silence is also a teacher. It instructs you in how to manage your feelings, how to react rather than respond. If you remain quiet, you provide yourself with some time to think, to wisely select your battles. Not everything is worthy of your energy, and not everyone is worthy of your response. Muniba was taught this profoundly. There were moments when individuals questioned her capabilities, criticized her for her disability, or attempted to belittle her. But she did not waste her breath trying to get through to them. She smiled, worked harder, and allowed her accomplishments to do the talking. Eventually, her silence was the strongest statement she could make. There is also beauty in silence. It allows you to connect with your soul. When the noise disappears, you start hearing your inner voice. The one that leads you, reassures you, and reminds you who you are. Muniba always describes that silence is where strength is created because that's where you recreate yourself. In that silence, you face your fears, your hurt, your doubts, and learn to overcome them. That's why silence is sacred. It's where your transformation starts. In a loud world, being silent is a rebellion. It tells you that you don't need anyone's approval anymore. You have found self-validation. You no longer pursue applause or approval. You aim for purpose. And that's what Muniba did. Her silence became her armor, guarding her peace as she progressed in her personal development. So when faced with criticism, gossip, or negativity, recall Muniba's lesson. You don't necessarily have to say anything back. Not all battles are worth the fight. Occasionally, your silence will say more than words ever could. Occasionally, it's the quiet ones who create the biggest noise. Muniba Mazari's life reminds us that silence is not emptiness, it's energy. It's the space where you take back control of your thoughts, regain your confidence, and rediscover your strength. Silence is your sanctuary, your power, your freedom. And when you learn to accept it, you quit living for noise. You begin living for peace. Because at the end, silence doesn't mean you're defeated. It means you've mastered yourself. It's that your attention has shifted from responding to expanding, from defending to developing. And that is where true power starts. Negativity and judgment, two things that none of us can avoid. Whatever your name, occupation, or intentions, There will always be those who disparage, question, or confuse you. Muniba Mazari has faced her share of this, yet she stands tall as a symbol of grace, strength, and self-belief. She teaches us that overcoming negativity and judgment doesn't mean changing the world's opinion. It means changing how you respond to it. After her accident, Muniba's life became an open book for the world to comment on. There were some who sympathized with her, some others who condemned her decisions, and some others even questioned her endurance. They declared her life was over. They declared she would not be able to live as before. They declared she would not be able to motivate anyone. But Muniba did not choose to hear those voices. She went within herself. She realized that others' views do not determine your fate. Your thoughts do. She decided that if people wanted to talk, let them. She would focus her energy on becoming the best version of herself. You see, judgment only has power when you give it your attention. The moment you stop reacting, you take back control. Muniba realized that she didn't need to prove anyone wrong. She just needed to prove herself right. When folks told her she was limited, she decided to demonstrate to them her potential. She took up motivational speaking, painting, and symbol of perseverance. Not by complaining, but by doing. That is how you transcend negativity, not through words, but through outcomes. The reality is, negativity is usually from individuals who do not grasp your path. They notice your wounds, but not your resilience. They notice your suffering, but not your strength. They notice where you tripped, but not how you struggled to get up. Muniba's lesson for us is, rather than take judgment personally, learn to view it as others' reaction, not yours. The world might judge out of ignorance, but your reaction always should be out of wisdom. And that's where silence is your greatest weapon. Muniba's silence in the face of criticism never had anything to do with weakness. It had to do with focus. She knew that responding to every bit of criticism just takes away your energy. Rather than spend time explaining her value to others, she used that time to build her future. And slowly, the same people who doubted her started to respect her. That's the strength of quiet growth. It turns criticism into applause. Conquering negativity also involves trusting in your truth, even if nobody else does. Muniba had to trust in herself when everybody else spoke against her. She needed to build up her confidence from the ruins of defeat. She needed to get strength from being alone and trust in failure. And she did all this by reminding herself that others' words are transitory. But her vision was eternal. There is a quote that defines Muniba's life exactly. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your inner voice. That's what she believes in. Her determination never faded because she learned that your worth does not diminish based on someone's failure to realize your value. You can't control what people are going to say about you, but you can control how much you let it get to you. Muniba's tale is evidence that peace does not reside where negativity is absent. It resides where response is mastered. She shows us that occasionally the best response to criticism is accomplishment. The best response to hatred is joy. And the greatest way to overcome judgment is to remain keen to your path. And so, when others doubt you, when others belittle your ambitions, or when others doubt your resilience, remember Muniba Mazari. Remember that no one else has the right to map the contours of your existence but you. Words may shatter you only if you allow them to. Hold ground in what you are. Remain quiet when the world is noisy. Continue working, continue believing, and continue evolving. Because one day, the same individuals who questioned you will be the same ones cheering for you. And when that day arrives, you won't have to say a word. Your triumph will speak louder than any criticism ever has. There is a point in everyone's life when silence and solitude will be our biggest teachers. For Muniba Mazari, that moment arrived when the world outside became far from her after her accident. The non-stop movement of life came to a standstill, and she was suddenly left all by herself, alone with her thoughts, her fears, and her pain. It was there, in that silence, in that profound loneliness, that Muniba started one of the most significant journeys of her life, the journey of self-discovery. Loneliness always seems scary. When the din subsides, we are left with nothing but ourselves, our fears, our doubts, our open wounds. But Muniba reminds us that sometimes you have to lose yourself in silence to find out who you really are. When she was no longer able to walk, when she was stuck in a hospital bed, she felt like her world had ended. The future that she had dreamed about vanished overnight. Friends drifted away, people changed, and everything familiar turned into uncertainty. But in that quiet emptiness, something beautiful began to happen. She started hearing her own voice again. For the first time, Muniba was not living according to the world's expectations. She wasn't trying to impress anyone or meet society's standards of success or beauty. She was simply being. She started to paint, not for accolades, but because her soul required an outlet to express itself. Her art became her reflection. Every color, every brush stroke a reflection of some facet of her essence that had gone forgotten. By being alone, she regained who she was, not who the world had diagnosed her to be, but who she belonged to. Self-discovery, as with Muniba, is not a simple thing. It takes honesty. It forces you to face the parts of you you've been avoiding. The silence forces you to look at your weaknesses, your hurt, your brokenness, but also at your strength, your bravery, and your potential. Muniba might have let her loneliness consume her, but instead she let it build her back stronger. She chose reflection over regret, creation over complaint. There's something strong about being alone. It removes distractions and causes you to look inward. Muniba constantly expresses that humans are scared of being alone because they don't like their own thoughts. But it is only when you stay with these thoughts that you start understanding yourself. In solitude, you realize what matters most. You understand what dreams still smolder inside you and what fears no longer merit your thought. That's how Muniba discovered her true self, not in the world's din, but within the quiet of her own heart. She came out of that isolation with an enhanced sense of purpose. She knew her story was not a tale of tragedy, but one of metamorphosis. The woman who once spent her days shattered and unsure became the woman who today inspires millions of people all around the globe. And that metamorphosis started the moment she began no longer to flee from her loneliness, but to hear it. Muniba's experience teaches us that alone and lonely are not synonymous. Solitude is a holy place, a space for healing, for introspection, for rediscovery. It is where you realize that your happiness doesn't rest in other people's hands, and your peace doesn't need validation. It's where you gain the courage to stand by yourself and the fortitude to walk on your own path. So the next time you're in solitude, when life tugs you out of the crowd, when you feel lost or invisible, recall Muniba's lesson. Don't be quick to fill the silence. Don't be afraid of the stillness. Work with it. Sit with yourself, learn from yourself, and become greater from yourself. Because it is in those quiet, lonely moments that you learn who you really are. Muniba Mazari's tale affirms that oftentimes, loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. It is life's way of preparing you to encounter the most significant individual you will ever meet yourself. And when you do, you will never once feel lost. Regardless of how quiet the world gets, one of the strongest lessons Muniba Mazari teaches us is how we must defend our energy. In a distracted world, a world of drama and constant noise, we all spend our energy trying to convince others of ourselves. We explain, justify, argue, and respond, losing sight that our energy is scarce and valuable. Muniba's story reminds us that when we discover how to channel that energy inward rather than outward, we no longer waste power on irrelevant things and begin creating a life that matters. Following the accident, Muniba could have spent her days getting angry at the world, blaming destiny, or reacting to those who criticized her. There were plenty of people who questioned her ability, gossiped about her limitations, and treated her with sympathy. But she soon understood that attention to things like that would only deplete her. So she made a decision to spend her energy in a different way. Instead of squandering it on negativity, she started putting it into self-awareness, into art, into meaning. And that one change transformed everything. Energy is like money. You can spend it, squander it, or invest it. Muniba chose to invest hers. She channeled her energy into art, into words, into inspiring others. Every stroke of the paintbrush, every word spoken, every act of charity was a means of transmuting her pain into power. She realized that you can't control others' words or actions, but you can control yours. And that takes power in the way you start by guarding your energy. We all give away our energy so readily, to arguments, to gossip, to suckers emotionally. Muniba reminds us that you don't have to go to every fight you're invited to. Not every complaint deserves your reply, and not every fight requires your involvement. When you center your energy on peace rather than reaction, you get clarity. You start seeing your purpose more clearly, because you're no longer filled with noise. Muniba regularly says, "Don't allow the actions of others destroy your inner peace." And that is the key to energy management. How to walk away from what troubles your spirit. She learned to say no, set boundaries, and prioritize her mental and emotional health. She learned that true strength lies not in winning every battle, but in knowing which ones are worth your energy. When you guard your energy, you start to see how strong you get. You no longer chase approval. You no longer seek to demonstrate your value. You start to work from a space of peace, concentration, and purpose. That is what Muniba is all about, the unassuming confidence of someone who knows where her energy should be. She doesn't spend it trying to convince others that she's worth it. She just lives it. Her successes are her own testimonial. Her elegance mutes skepticism. And her strength makes change happen, all because she had mastered the use of her energy. Another aspect of this lesson is learning to channel pain into purpose. Muniba had all the reasons to feel defeated, but she channeled that same energy to reconstruct herself. Every failure was a fuel for her return. That's how she evolved from being a survivor to becoming an icon, by learning to control where her energy goes. And this is a lesson for all of us. Consider how much vitality we waste fretting about what others think, reliving errors, or ruminating over things we can't control. Suppose we put that energy toward learning, toward growing, toward creating, toward loving. This is what Muniba teaches. Your energy is your strength, and where you put it decides the life you build. So when you're tired, when you catch yourself overreacting to every little thing, stop. Ask yourself, is this worth my power? If it doesn't make you grow, if it doesn't give you peace, it doesn't deserve your energy. Guard it fiercely. Use it wisely. Muniba Mazari's story teaches us that power isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things with the right energy. Because when you learn to master your energy, you cease living the life of a survivor and begin creating the life you truly want. And in that harmony, in that peaceful concentration, you'll discover your peace, your purpose, and your power. One of the greatest things we can learn from Muniba Mazari is that actions always speak louder than words. In a world where everybody is busy speaking about dreams, strife, views, and agendas, Muniba preferred to act. She got the fact that change doesn't result from what we say that we will do, but what we really do, stealthily, steadily, and with love. Her existence is living testimony that silent actions are more potent than 1,000 loud statements. After her accident, the world was waiting for her to quit. People told her she would never be able to live a normal life again. They spoke about her limitations, her losses, and her brokenness. But instead of arguing or trying to convince anyone otherwise, she let her actions tell the story. She began painting from her hospital bed, holding the brush between her fingers, using her heart as her guide. Each stroke was a wordless declaration: I am here, I am able, I am me. That's what makes her story so inspiring. She didn't walk around telling people about her toughness. She lived it. She didn't answer fear with words. She answered with actions. Each painting she finished, each speech she gave, each smile she flashed became a silent reminder to the world: strength doesn't have to yell. There's something terribly empowering about this way of living. So many of us spend our energy trying to persuade others of our value or our aspirations. We hope they will recognize our potential, see our intentions. But Muniba is teaching us that you don't explain your dreams, you live them. You don't have to prove yourself strong. You must demonstrate it through action. Because when your work speaks, words become unnecessary. Her tale also demonstrates that silence can be the loudest answer to skepticism. When individuals questioned whether she could live well, she established a career touching millions. When society questioned whether she was beautiful, she became the icon of confidence and self-acceptance. When others perceived disability, she demonstrated ability. Her life was her testimony. She didn't have to argue. She became the proof. And this principle doesn't just apply to overcoming adversity. It applies to everyday life. We all face situations where we feel misunderstood, overlooked, or underestimated. In those moments, instead of defending yourself endlessly, take a breath and let your actions speak. Work hard, stay consistent. Focus on your goals. Because ultimately, results silence doubt better than explanations ever could. Muniba's success didn't come from words. It came from perseverance. She took years to hone her craft, to discover her voice as an artist and a speaker, and to craft her message of empowerment. She didn't share every struggle or bemoan every barrier. She just kept going. And when finally others turned around, they saw not a woman who spoke of success, but one who constructed it one brushstroke at a time, one speech at a time, one act of fearlessness at a time. To let your actions speak is also to lead from a place of authenticity. Muniba never pretended she had all the answers. She was vulnerable, open about her pain and her process through her words and art. Not in an attempt to elicit sympathy, but to demonstrate to others that healing and growth were possible. Her vulnerability became her strength, and her resilience became her voice. This is the lesson she gives to us all: stop talking about what you'll do. Start doing it. Stop seeking approval. Start building proof. Stop reacting to doubt. Start creating results. Because the world might not believe what you say, but it cannot ignore what you show. Ultimately, what you do is your legacy. The words disappear, the applause grows faint, but what you do, what you create, how you inspire, how you love, remains long after. Muniba Mazari's tale teaches us the greatest thing you can possibly say is quite simply this: I did it. And when your actions start to speak for you, silence becomes your strength, focus becomes your voice, and success becomes your answer to everything the world once doubted. Forgiveness. It's one of the hardest lessons life teaches us, and yet, it's one of the most freeing. For Muniba Mazari, forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of others. It was about releasing herself from the prison of pain. She knew that healing is not when the wound's close, but when the heart can forgive. Forgive people, situations, and even life itself for not happening the way we wanted. Muniba could have been angry after her accident. Angry at the fate, angry at the people who escaped, angry at the world that now looked at her with sympathy rather than pride. Everything she had once known changed in an instant. Her dreams, her identity, her future. Yet she didn't let bitterness consume her. She realized that holding on to resentment would only keep her tied to her past, unable to move forward. And so she chose the hardest, yet most powerful path: forgiveness. Forgiveness, to Muniba, was not excusing what occurred, but embracing it. It was a matter of acknowledging, yes, this hurt exists, but it will not become my identity. She discovered life can be uncertain and sometimes unjust, yet serenity is found when you cease asking, "Why me?" and begin inquiring, "What now?" That attitude adjustment turned everything around. When you forgive, you don't alter the past, you alter your relationship with it. Muniba knew that the individuals who brought pain to her or abandoned her already played their role in her narrative. Holding resentment towards them would only burden her. So she let them go, not because they were worthy of it, but because she was worthy of peace. She converted her agony into purpose, heartbreak into hope, and silence into strength. Forgiveness also includes forgiving yourself, and that's usually the most difficult type. Muniba learned to forgive herself for lapses of weakness, for the tears she cried in frustration, for those days when she questioned her own resilience. She learned to love her scars rather than to conceal them. Every scar, she says, is a reminder not of what shattered her, but of what mended her. And that's the strength of self-forgiveness. It converts guilt to gratitude and shame to compassion towards oneself. We mistakenly believe that forgiveness is a weakness, but Muniba's life proves the opposite. It's a supreme act of courage. It takes courage to release when it's easier to hold on. It takes wisdom to realize revenge or hatred will never lead to peace. Forgiveness isn't about saying, "It's okay." It's about saying, "I am okay now." It's the choice to end victimhood in the past and become the author of your future. In her journey, Muniba illustrates that forgiveness does not happen overnight. It's a process. It's waking up each day and deciding to be free. It's deciding to smile whenever you think about the pain, to walk forward whenever you could turn around, to love again when your heart was broken. Her journey reminds us of the healing fact that to heal doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live in peace with what you remember. And this is a lesson to everyone. We all have wounds, from others, from experiences, from ourselves. But if we continue to cling to anger, we remain where we are. When we forgive, we start to heal. The chains that bound us, they begin to fall. That's what Muniba is all about, an unchained spirit, a soul who learned to fly by letting go. Forgiveness restored power to her. Forgiveness enabled her to perform on stage, smile naturally, and talk with love instead of hurt. Forgiveness enabled her to move people from bitterness, but from compassion. She forgave the past so she could live in the present, fully, freely, and fearlessly. So learn this from Muniba Mazari release. Not for them, but for you. Forgive the ones who never said sorry. Forgive the moments that shattered you. Forgive yourself for what you didn't realize then. Because when you do, you'll feel a lightness you haven't experienced in years. Forgiveness doesn't imply you forget what occurred. It means you're no longer a slave to it. And as Muniba shows us so beautifully, that's when true healing begins. In a world that constantly tells us to seek approval, to look perfect, sound perfect, live perfectly, Muniba Mazari teaches us the beauty of finding validation from within. She learned through pain and transformation that true strength doesn't come from applause, followers, or praise. It is from that inner voice of you that whispers, "I am enough." And maybe the most amazing thing about her story is how she found that voice when the world was silent. Since her accident, Muniba's looks changed, her situation changed, and so did the perception of people towards her. She no longer conformed to society's ideal of beauty or achievement. People would stare, gossip, and even pity her at times. It would have been simple for her to shrink, for the world's whispers to determine her value, but she didn't. Instead, she did something remarkable. She began not to listen to the noise outside and listen to the power within. Muniba understood that so long as her sense of worth was based on others, she would never be free of their judgments. Therefore, she made a choice of freedom, the freedom that springs from acceptance of herself. She gazed into the mirror, saw her scars, and chose to love herself not despite them, but because of them. She knew that strength has nothing to do with having a perfect life or a perfect body. It has to do with loving all of your journey, even the painful parts. When the world viewed her as weak, Muniba viewed herself as resilient. When others told her, "You can't," she smiled and whispered softly, "Watch me." She did not need anyone's approval from magazines or media. She redefined beauty for herself. Her wheelchair did not confine her. It was her throne, a reflection of courage and grace. That is the power of inner strength. It turns your most formidable weaknesses into your most motivating strengths. Muniba's message is one of simplicity and strength. You don't require the world's validation to be worthy. You are already worthy. You don't require someone else to confirm that you count. You count because you exist, because you breathe, because you keep on showing up even after everything that's attempted to shatter you. That's actual strength. The kind that doesn't require likes, compliments, or validation. External validation is fleeting. It passes as suddenly as it comes. But inner strength, that never goes away. It remains with you when nobody applauds, when nobody pays attention, when nobody believes in you. Muniba took solace in the fact that her worth wasn't negotiable. She didn't need to be compared, graded, or validated. Her value was in her narrative, her purpose, and her own unshakable faith in herself. It's a reminder we all must take. Too often, we seek validation in the wrong places. In society, relationships, career, social media, or societal expectations. We believe approval or success will complete us. But Muniba's story reveals that true fulfillment starts when you look within. When you cease to ask, "Am I good enough?" and instead affirm, "I am more than enough." And what do you do when you no longer look for other people's validation? You find peace. You find power. You cease competing and begin creating. You cease comparing and begin appreciating. You start living life on your own terms, under your own light. That's what Muniba does day after day. She lives unapologetically, authentically, and beautifully herself. Her process is a reminder that strength is not loud. It doesn't always roar. Occasionally, it's quiet. A steady confidence that doesn't have to prove itself to others. It's that type of strength that holds up, the type that gets you through storms. Muniba Mazari is living proof that the strongest approval you will ever get is the one you approve of yourself. You don't require the world to say you can do it. You need to think so in your heart. For when your confidence stems from inside, no criticism can debase it. No failure can shatter it, and no rejection can erase it. So cease to look outside for what is possible only within. Stand tall, even if the whole world fails to notice. Keep shining, even if the world chooses not to applaud. For the moment you comprehend your value doesn't lie in anyone else. You become unstoppable, just like Muniba Mazari. Patience and faith, two mere words, but they hold the power to turn pain into peace and struggle into strength. Muniba Mazari's life is a living reflection of these virtues. When everything in her world fell apart after the accident, when her dreams shattered and her plans vanished, she didn't find instant answers or easy comfort. What kept her going was patience, the quiet, steady belief that even in the darkest moments, light would eventually find her. During all those months in the hospital, when the future was bleak and her body was recuperating slowly, Muniba could have simply lost heart. But she did not. She decided to wait, not helplessly, but with intention. She knew that healing, physical or emotional, happens slowly. The world outside could be moving at a breakneck speed, but she gave herself time. She had learned to accept that growth is not a race but a journey. That was where faith came in. The unshakable belief that life was not punishing her, but readjusting her for something better. Patience had taught her acceptance. It had taught her that some answers don't arrive when you insist on them. They arrive when you're ready to accept them. And faith kept telling her that even when she couldn't look down the road and see what was ahead, it was still there, but she just needed to walk it. She thought that her suffering had a point, that there was a purpose. She was still here, still alive, still struggling. And that belief brought her strength when reason couldn't. Muniba's patience was not waiting for things to improve, but it was coming to terms with where she was. She started painting, talking, and telling her story, not because she had all the answers, but because she believed in the process. She understood that each little step, each attempt, each act of bravery was bringing her closer to her calling. That's what faith does. It lets you go on, even when you can't see it all. These days, we expect everything at once: success, healing, happiness. We get angry when life doesn't happen on our schedule. But Muniba reminds us that the most exquisite miracles occur in time. Flowers don't develop overnight, and neither do we. The waiting, the not knowing, the quiet, that's where resilience is forged. That's where character is forged. There were times when Muniba wept, times when she wondered why things had to occur as they did. But even during those times, she lost no hope. She usually declares that when life knocks you to your knees, you are in the right spot to pray. That is faith, not a lack of fear, but a presence of trust. The faith that there is something bigger working for you, that the storm will pass, and that what's supposed to be yours will always come to you. Through faith and patience, Muniba found peace. She understood that not all delays are a denial, and not all setbacks are failure. Sometimes the world slows you down so you will be able to view things clearer. Sometimes it closes one door because there is a better door ahead. Her faith helped her see purpose in pain and meaning in quiet. Now, when Muniba addresses crowds of people internationally, her message is one of simplicity and depth. Don't lose faith when life becomes tough. Sometimes you can't view the bigger picture, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. She reminds us that patience is never weakness. It's controlled strength. And faith is never blind. It's belief in the unseen, the knowledge that each step, even the painful ones, is taking you somewhere better. So when life tests your patience, when nothing's going right, when you feel stuck, remember Muniba's story. Breathe. Hold on to belief. Trust that your journey is unfolding just as it should. Because patience isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. And faith. Faith is knowing that the sun will rise again, even when you can't see it yet. Muniba Mazari's life shows us that patience